You think they are gone, but they are watching. Every move you make, every word you speak, it triggers a reaction. These are not mere coincidences, this is the response of hidden forces. Witches operate in the shadows, and once exposed, their true strategies are unleashed. Tonight you will see the secrets they never wanted you to know. Prepare yourself, what you are about to hear will awaken a power you didn't know was inside you. The moment a witch is exposed, the first thing they do is strike. But this is not always physical, most often. It is spiritual, emotional, and psychological. You will feel it in subtle ways first: a sudden weight on your spirit, dreams that feel unusually real, shadows that linger longer than they should. This is the initial wave of retaliation designed to intimidate, destabilize, and scare you into silence. They know their identity is compromised, and when that happens, fear becomes their weapon. You may notice people around you suddenly turning cold, relationships strained for no reason, or inexplicable obstacles appearing in your life. These are not coincidences. This is the witch's influence reaching out, trying to reclaim control. I remember a testimony from someone who had dared to expose a local occult practitioner. Within days, their finances collapsed, the job they had worked for years became threatened, and friends who once were loyal suddenly doubted them. At first, they questioned themselves: am I imagining this? But the truth was undeniable. Exposure triggered a backlash. The tools of retaliation vary. Some use curses aimed at your health or fortune. Others send deception into your path, whispering lies through people who are unknowingly under their influence. You may even encounter sudden, unexplained accidents, minor at first, escalating if left unchecked. Understanding that this is a deliberate, strategic response is your first defense. You must also know this retaliation is fueled by rage, envy, and desperation. The more power you display after exposing them, the more intense the attack becomes. They are predators accustomed to working in secrecy. Once that secrecy is shattered, they feel cornered, and cornered predators strike with precision. Faith is your first shield. You cannot fight these spiritual forces with reasoning alone. Prayer, prophetic declarations, and bold faith-based action are required to counteract this first wave. You must affirm your authority in the spiritual realm, knowing that the exposure itself has shifted the balance of power. But there is more. Retaliation often includes manipulation of your mind. You may begin to doubt your own perceptions, question your reality, and feel anxiety that seems unnatural. These are the early signs that a witch is activating spiritual measures against you. Recognizing them is crucial. It prevents you from being blindsided. Let me tell you a real-life example. A woman exposed a coven operating in her city. Within 24 hours, her home seemed. Cursed appliances broke, sudden leaks appeared, and unexplained noises haunted her nights. Friends suddenly offered unsolicited advice, some even trying to dissuade her from pursuing the exposure. This is classic diversion. It's designed to confuse, to drain your spiritual energy, and to make you reconsider your actions. But here's the key. The moment you recognize this, you reclaim authority. The attack loses power when met with awareness and decisive action. Witches operate best in secrecy and in fear. Exposure flips the table. Their retaliation is reactive, not creative. They are responding to you, not controlling you. Immediate retaliation is also a test of your endurance and spiritual strength. If you falter here, if you let fear dominate you, give them space to deepen their influence. But if you remain steadfast, if you understand that the chaos is a symptom of their fear, you begin to dismantle their grip. Every element of their attack is layered: subtle curses, psychological manipulation, attempts to isolate you socially, and sometimes direct threats. Do not underestimate the depth of their strategy, but also do not underestimate the authority you now wield. Exposure itself is a weapon of spiritual power. It forces them to reveal themselves, and that revelation can be used to break their hold over others. Faith, vigilance, and prophetic action must accompany your awareness. Speak over your life boldly. Declare protection over your household, your family, and your mind. Recognize the spiritual signatures of retaliation: the sudden financial block, the unexpected arguments, the unexplained sicknesses, and respond with prayer and authority. This is not optional, it is survival. Remember, witches are reactive, not proactive once exposed. They are striking out of fear, desperation, and anger. If you meet that reaction with courage, strategy, and spiritual authority, you do not merely survive, you begin to dominate the battlefield. This first wave of attack is meant to intimidate, but it can also become their greatest undoing if handled correctly. Finally, understand that exposure itself is a weapon that disrupts their operations. The moment you shine light on their activity, it strips them of secrecy. And secrecy is their power. Once that power is challenged, their first response is retaliation, but every attack you face confirms that you have struck a nerve. This is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign that the truth is working. In summary, the first response of witches after exposure is immediate retaliation strategically aimed at your spirit, your mind, your life, and your relationships. Recognize it, confront it with faith. Declare your authority. And understand this. The chaos is temporary, the victory is permanent when you refuse to yield. After the first wave of retaliation, the next weapon a witch unleashes is manipulation. This is subtle, insidious, and often invisible to the untrained eye. Witches do not just attack the body, they attack perception, they twist reality, and they aim to control the narrative of your life. Once exposed, they will attempt to rewrite the story to make you look wrong, unstable, or even dangerous. They understand human psychology. They know that fear and doubt are powerful tools. You may begin noticing strange coincidences, messages misconstrued, friends questioning your intentions, authority figures suddenly challenging your character. It is not chance. It is orchestrated manipulation designed to isolate you, to make you second-guess your judgment, and to drain your spiritual and emotional energy. I've seen this firsthand. One man exposed a practitioner in his city. Within a week, his closest allies, people he had trusted for decades, began doubting him. Gossip spread, subtle lies were injected into his professional circles, and his credibility started to wobble. He did not understand it at first. He thought he was imagining it. But soon he realized that the witch had used proxies, people unknowingly under spiritual influence, to shape opinions against him. Manipulation often works in layers. The first layer is emotional, fear, confusion, and anger. The second layer is relational, turning people against you or creating friction where none existed. The third layer is societal, affecting your reputation, your opportunities, your financial stability. Witches exploit every avenue to destabilize you. Deception is their companion. They will plant false information, create illusions, and use others as instruments to carry out their plan. You may see it in dreams that feel prophetic but are actually designed to confuse. You may encounter people who seem friendly but are subtly undermining you. These deceptions are spiritual weapons meant to weaken your faith and make you doubt your discernment. The critical insight here is awareness. You cannot fight manipulation with ignorance. You must train your spirit to see patterns where others see randomness. You must test the origin of every disturbing thought, every sudden conflict, and every relationship disruption. Ask yourself, who benefits from this? What is the spiritual root behind this? One of the most effective ways witches manipulate is through emotional triggers. They know your weaknesses, your fears, your desires, and they exploit them. Perhaps it is a personal loss, a long-standing insecurity, or a sensitive issue. Once triggered, your reactions can feed into their strategy, making you appear irrational or unstable, exactly the narrative they want. Faith is again your defense. Not passive faith, but active declarative faiths. Speak truth over your reality. Declare your mind and emotions protected. Recognize that attempts to manipulate you are a reaction to exposure. They are trying to regain control, but control has shifted. You are now the one with insight. You are now aware of their tactics. Practical action is essential. Keep meticulous awareness of your interactions, words, and surroundings. Do not allow subtle manipulation to cloud your judgment. When faced with false accusations or misleading information, respond with clarity and authority, not emotion. Emotional reactions feed deception, spiritual authority dismantles it. Real-life examples show that those who recognize manipulation can turn the tables. A woman who had exposed the coven noticed her friends suddenly acting distant and some spreading rumors. Instead of reacting defensively, she prayed deliberately, discerned the spiritual source, and took corrective action. Within days, the relationships that were genuinely aligned strengthened, while those under manipulation fell away. She did not fight people, she fought the unseen strategies, and victory followed. Deception also extends into your environment. Witches often plant obstacles designed to appear natural. Car accidents, sudden illnesses, unexpected financial burdens. These are not random. They are spiritual tactics aimed at testing your resilience. Recognize these events as the handiwork of an exposed adversary, not as signs of weakness in yourself. The moment you understand manipulation and deception is a spiritual battlefield, your perspective changes. You stop reacting blindly. You stop being a pawn. Every lie, every confusion, every misrepresentation becomes evidence of exposure. The more they twist, the more their fear is revealed. Spiritual warfare insight here: deception loses power when confronted with discernment. Pray for clarity, maintain vigilance, never accept appearances at face value. Ask God for insight and test every impression against truth. Exposure empowers you to see beyond illusion and into reality. Finally, manipulation and deception are signs of desperation. Once witches feel the light of exposure, they try to regain dominance through trickery. But trickery is weaker than revelation. Awareness, faith, and disciplined spiritual action will neutralize every deceptive tactic they throw at you. What was once hidden now becomes visible. What was once powerful now becomes transparent. In summary, after immediate retaliation comes manipulation and deception, a complex strategy aimed at twisting reality, isolating you, and feeding doubt. Your defense is awareness, discernment, and bold spiritual authority. Recognize the attacks, stand firm, and understand that exposure has shifted the battlefield. The unseen forces can only move within the limits you allow. Once a witch has been exposed and their attempts at manipulation are countered, they escalate to a more dangerous level: spiritual oppression. This is where the unseen realm begins to weigh heavily on your life. It is no longer subtle, it is tangible, relentless, and designed to break your spirit. You feel it as heaviness, sudden fatigue, unexplained sickness, anxiety that comes from nowhere, or even fear that grips your heart with no rational cause. This is the shadow of a spiritual war. Spiritual oppression is not accidental, it is calculated. Witches call upon demonic assignments, familiar spirits, and unclean forces to attack those who have revealed them. This oppression is personal. It targets your mind, your home, your family, and your destiny. The goal is to make exposure costly, to force you to regret revealing them. Every delay, every unexpected obstacle, every emotional breakdown is part of their strategy. Real-life cases are chilling. One man exposed a secretive witchcraft circle operating within his city. Within days, his household became a battleground. Appliances malfunctioned simultaneously. Lights flickered at night. Sleep became impossible, and dreams were filled with fear and manipulation. It seemed as though the entire environment had turned against him. Every moment of life became a test of endurance. The purpose of spiritual oppression is twofold. First, to weaken your resolve, to make you question whether exposing them was wise. Second, to intimidate others who might follow your example. Witches rely on fear and secrecy to maintain their influence. Once exposed, they unleash oppression to remind everyone that the consequences of exposure are real and terrifying. But here is the truth you must grasp. Oppression is a sign of power shifting. The forces they summon operate under limitations. They can push, they can pressure, but they cannot take what is protected by divine authority. The moment you recognize the oppression as a spiritual attack, you reclaim power. The key is awareness and decisive spiritual action. Faith becomes a weapon. You must declare protection over your mind, body, and home. Pray with authority. Invoke the name of God over every dark influence. Remember, this is not a suggestion, it is a command. Spiritual oppression responds to authority, not despair. The more steadfast you are, the weaker their dark assignments become. Another tactic of witches under exposure is to target your relationships through spiritual influence. Friends, colleagues, and even family members may suddenly act irrationally, sowing division and creating emotional stress. These attacks are intended to isolate you, making you vulnerable and easier to manipulate. Do not allow them to succeed. Strengthen your spiritual walls and maintain clarity over your interactions. Spiritual warfare insight: recognize the signs early. Unexpected anxiety, sudden illness, recurring nightmares, or an unexplainable heaviness in your spirit are not coincidences. They are the direct result of spiritual oppression unleashed by witches reacting to exposure. Once recognized, you can combat them with prayer, fasting, and prophetic declarations. Do not ignore them, do not fear them, and do not underestimate their intention. They are testing the limits of your faith. Let me share another real-life example. A woman exposed her ex-witch neighbor who had been tormenting the community. Almost immediately, she felt an oppressive presence in her home. Doors slammed without wind. Cold spots appeared in rooms. She lost sleep for nights. Friends tried to convince her she was imagining things. But instead of succumbing, she prayed daily, spoke authority over her environment, and declared protection over her family. Within weeks, the oppressive weight lifted, and she gained spiritual clarity stronger than ever. Exposure had activated the darkness, but her faith and authority overcame it. Spiritual oppression often accompanies temptation. Witches may attempt to lure you into actions that compromise your integrity. They use spiritual pressure to make wrong choices appear appealing or inevitable. You may feel intense emotional conflict, unexplained desires, or even shame that clouds your judgment. Recognize these as weapons. They are not coincidences, they are orchestrated spiritual attacks. Stand firm. Align your actions with your faith. This is your line of defense. Another layer of oppression targets your destiny. Witches understand timing and opportunity. They will attempt to block your breakthroughs, delay promotions, sabotage finances, and hinder spiritual advancement. Every delay is not random, it is calculated. They are trying to punish exposure with delay. But remember, delays are temporary. The authority you wield after exposing them overrules their dark tactics. Your breakthroughs will come stronger, faster, and with clarity. Finally, understand this. Spiritual oppression is the last resort of a cornered enemy. When manipulation fails, when intimidation fails, and when exposure strips them off, secrecy, oppression becomes their primary weapon. It is fierce, relentless, and terrifying, but it is limited. You are not powerless. Every moment of oppression is an opportunity to exercise spiritual authority, strengthen faith, and declare divine protection. In summary, after retaliation and manipulation comes spiritual oppression, a dark, heavy, and relentless attack aimed at breaking your spirit. Recognize it, confront it, declare authority over it. Faith and awareness transform oppression from a weapon of destruction into a confirmation of victory. Exposure has shifted the battlefield, and your spiritual power is now the force that witches cannot touch without limitation. When a witch realizes that retaliation, manipulation, and spiritual oppression have failed, they escalate to desperate, extreme measures. This is the final stage, the point where their fear becomes all-consuming and their actions dangerously erratic. What you will face now is calculated chaos, designed to overwhelm, confuse, and intimidate. Desperation tactics take many forms. Sometimes they attempt to discredit you publicly, spreading lies so convincing that outsiders begin questioning your truth. Other times, they target your environment, planting objects, symbols, or rituals meant to curse or misdirect you. And in extreme cases, they attempt direct spiritual confrontation, sending strong demonic forces to challenge your authority. I've witnessed situations where exposure triggered extreme behavior. A practitioner, exposed by a courageous believer, resorted to enlisting others to harass the exposer through both visible and invisible means. Strange symbols appeared in the yard. Threatening messages arrived from untraceable sources. Sleep became impossible. Fear was amplified in every corner of life. This is the desperation of a witch cornered by revelation. But here is the critical truth. Exposure has shifted the power dynamic. What feels like chaos is actually a confirmation of victory. The more extreme their tactics, the more fearful they are of the truth being known. You are no longer reacting blindly, you are standing in the light while their darkness fights against it. Every desperate move is proof that their influence is weakening. Faith and authority must escalate accordingly. Now is the time for bold prophetic declarations, strategic prayers, and unwavering spiritual confidence. Declare over your home, family, finances, and destiny that every scheme, every curse, and every demonic assignment is nullified and broken. Do not negotiate with darkness, command it under the authority you possess in the spiritual realm. Witches also attempt relational warfare at this stage. They try to isolate you by turning allies, friends, and even family against you. But remember, exposure has revealed them. Their alliances are now transparent. Those who genuinely stand with you will do so with clarity, while those influenced by deception will reveal themselves. Do not fear isolation, it is temporary. Trust the alignment of truth. Desperation also fuels deceit and intimidation. They may fabricate spiritual signs to frighten you or to make you doubt your path. Dreams, visions, and uncanny coincidences may be manipulated to induce fear. Recognize these tactics for what they are: distractions. Their power is reactive, not proactive. The moment you confront these signs with authority, their effect diminishes. Here is a crucial real-life example. An individual exposed a witch operating in his neighborhood. Within days, threatening events escalated, Animals acted strangely, unexplained fires broke out in minor ways, and neighbors were manipulated to speak against him. Instead of succumbing, he anchored himself in faith, declared prophetic authority over his household, and refused to be intimidated. Within a week, the chaotic signs diminished. The witch's desperate measures had failed, and exposure had solidified his spiritual position. Desperation can also provoke reckless attempts to undermine your health, finances, or career. But these attacks are unsustainable. Darkness cannot create lasting fruit in the light. Their schemes are temporary, fragile, and breakable when confronted with truth, prayer, and authority. At this point, your role is clear. Recognize the escalation for what it is, stand firm, and take full spiritual authority. Exposure has weakened their influence. Now your faith, clarity, and spiritual action complete the victory. Every desperate tactic they deploy is evidence of your power and revelation. Finally, understand that ultimate exposure has a ripple effect. Once you withstand their desperation tactics, their influence over others collapses. Their network of fear and secrecy dissolves. Witnesses of their actions see the truth. Allies who were once manipulated return. Your courage and spiritual authority become a template for others to overcome hidden darkness. In summary, desperation tactics are the final extreme measures witches deploy when exposed. Chaos, manipulation, and spiritual attack speak, but these are signs of a power shift in your favor. Confront every tactic with unwavering faith, prophetic declarations, and spiritual authority. Victory is not just possible, it is inevitable when you stand firm in the light, exposing darkness and claiming the authority that comes from revelation. You have seen the truth, the hidden strategies, the dark retaliation, the deception, the oppression, and the desperation. What they hoped would silence you has only awakened your authority. The fear they tried to instill has transformed into your boldness. Every attack, every scheme, every lie, they have revealed themselves before you. Now you stand unshakable, armed with clarity, faith, and spiritual power. Your exposure has broken their hold, and nothing can restore the secrecy they once thrived on. Rise in victory, for the darkness has fled, and the light within you will never be dimmed.